We are live. One place. All right. Welcome back to the After Action Project. Tonight's episode 94. We are. Oh. Let's try that again. Welcome back to the After Action Project. Tonight's episode, After Action Project, episode 94. We are joined by Shannon of Shannon's
Garden Gallery.
Yeah, I know. I told you I needed Andy here. Oh, golly. This is episode 94, not episode 1. So we'll get this all cleaned up in post. Good deal. Let a couple people join us on the live as it is. So third time is the charm, perhaps. Hey, y'all, welcome back to the After Action Project. Tonight's episode 94, is brought to you by our newest show sponsor. That's Locked In Grip. Check them out at lockedingrip.com. We'll talk about them a little bit more in just a second. It's also brought to you by the Range Buddy app. If you guys haven't checked out the Range Buddy app, be sure to check that out on your favorite app store. So tonight's show sponsors, as we said, After Action Project is brought to you by this big goofy redhead that is acting like he's never done this before. We'll be discussing fuck me. Andy, if you're watching this, I blame this 100% on you. Oh my God. Tonight we are joined by Shannon Pable of Shannon's Garden and Gun Gallery, and we'll be discussing their women's intro to firearms and women's holster course. So we have a great episode lined up for you tonight. We have Michelle and Teresa joining us as our students. Andy is out for tonight. Hopefully we'll have him back next week so we can forego all those terrible intro difficulties that we haven't seen since episode 2. If you guys have forgotten about episode 2, go back and rewatch and re-listen to that. And it's a miracle that we've made it here all the way to episode 94. As I mentioned a minute ago, Locked In Grip is our newest show sponsor. And I had a couple people introduce this to me. Tim Herron and then Andy, our co-host here. Short story. Tim and I were taking an instructor course a couple years back out in Arizona. And we stopped at the store and we got some liquid sports chalk for our hands. And it kind of sucked, So when Andy was talking about Locked In Grip and that it's a liquid sports chalk, I was a little bit reluctant to kind of give it a go. I didn't think it'd be much better than the experience that I had with the brand over there in Arizona. And I got to tell you, man, I couldn't have been more wrong about that. It lasted the entire day, both days out there in the Arizona heat. Or I'm sorry, not in the Arizona heat, and New Mexico's heat. I took a class with Tim, shot a match with him, taking a class with him, and it's been phenomenal. It allows me to really lock my grip in, as the name implies, keeps my hand dry, so that when I'm working on my fundamentals, I don't have to worry or stress about, the grip aspect of it. I know that's one thing that I can check that box, that the grip is going to remain locked in. And I don't have to sweat that. So give them a check out. Check them out at lockedingrip.com. This will probably be our last episode tonight. So Shannon, do me a favor, take over from here, introduce yourself to our listeners, talk to us a little bit about your training company. And then I want you to spend a minute or two talking about how you came up with the name for what you do.
Okay, glad to. First of all, I use Locked In Grip. It works great. Been using it for a while. I also use it to work out too. So, my name's Shannon Pable. I am the owner of Shannon's Garden and Gun Gallery. And a little history about the name is I'm a retired landscape designer and did that for close to 2 decades. And the name of my company was Shannon's Garden Gallery. And when I started shooting, and then which led into instructing, somebody said, "Oh, you should have this magazine. It's Garden and Gun." So I added the Shannon's Garden and Gun Gallery to my company name. I still do a little bit of landscape stuff on the side. My company now, I mainly teach women. I also teach some men. I do a lot of one-on-one private instruction. Um, I'm also a leader and instructor for Armed Women of America. We have a chapter up in Gainesville. It's a new chapter. I share the leadership with Stacy Dawson. She's my co-leader, and we mainly teach out of a private outdoor range, Cherokee Gun Club. And these two wonderful ladies that have joined us, I know through Armed Women of America, through private teaching, through my classes. Michelle attended the ladies holster class, plus I know her through AWA. Teresa, I know also through AWA and also through some one-on-one teaching. So yeah, I've been teaching now firearms instruction for almost 6 years. I've been shooting about 10 years. I've been an instructor in other areas of my life, so it's not the first time I'm an actual instructor, just new to the firearms instructing. So I mainly teach women that are new to firearms, but I also teach intermediate and advanced. I really enjoy it. I'm passionate about it. There's a lot of people out there that are gun owners, especially during COVID, that have had absolutely no training. And that is very concerning to me. So if I can just teach one person at a time to be safer with their firearm, awesome.
Yeah, it's I wholeheartedly agree, man. There's with the influx of gun owners over the last few years, it doesn't feel like a larger percentage of those folks are taking classes, and to each their own. And I don't want to talk about mandatory training, but I do think as a responsible gun owner, you should receive a certain level of training, and that level of training is to each their own, right? It's whatever level is going to make you comfortable and confident with your handgun, and if it's going to be a tool for self-defense, something that allows you to competently use that in whatever situation you feel you might need that gun in. So I want to circle back to the one-on-one training, because I can tell you as a student, that's my favorite type of training to receive. As an instructor, it's one of those things where I don't know. It's a little bit more sporadic. So I want to dive into that. I want to pick your brain on that. But before we do that, I want to get our students, Michelle and Teresa, to introduce themselves to our listeners. We'll kick it off with Teresa. Talk to us a little bit about your background in the firearms training world and what brought you to Shannon.
Hi, so my name is Teresa Rogers. I am the owner of Ladies and Leads Firearm Training. I moved to the Georgia area about 3 years ago, and it was during COVID. I was sitting at home all by myself and said, what can I do to protect myself, protect those around me? The world was changing very quickly, as it still is. And I also wanted to be around people that I could gain knowledge and grow from. That led me to a wonderful shooting sisterhood with AWA and A Girl and a Gun. And to say that I've been surrounded by women that are supportive, I never in a million years could I imagine to find, this amazing posse that I've encountered. And the biggest thing that got me into firearms training is I noticed when I walked into the room, I was the only woman, or I was one of two, or I was the only woman of color, and that became a big motivating factor to change. I really want to change that. I want to walk into the room and, Jeremy, I want you to be the minority. I want to see women everywhere, and I want us to feel empowered and not be afraid of these tools that we have in our disposal to protect ourselves and keep our family safe.
That's awesome. And I've talked about it on the show before, but I think the biggest problem the gun industry has is that the majority, the base, right, is going to looks like what I'm going to look like in 5 years, right? That grandpa white guy, right? Like that goes out and wants to shoot a double barrel shotgun at some clay pigeons and call it a day. And they don't believe in, they think that's what it's there for. They think it's there for skeet shooting and hunting. And it's like, that's not at all what it's there for. So God bless you. I appreciate that. I want to circle back in a little bit and talk about how AWA and A Girl and a Gun, how they kind of cross over. And, but Michelle, talk to us a little bit about yourself. What brought you to Shannon, and who the heck are you?
Well, my name is Michelle Dormany, and I started shooting about 5 years ago, I guess. I looked up one day, and my boys were grown up, and my husband travels, and there were all these loaded guns around my house, and I didn't know how to unload them. I didn't know how to use them, and I thought I need to do something about this because I'm here by myself so much of the time. But I didn't want them to teach me because we know how that is. Yeah. So I kind of looked around me and found a dear friend at church who was a member of AWA, and she invited me to this wonderful group of ladies that I met. And Teresa, it's like I walked in and I thought, these women have guns,
Right?
Like, really?
Right?
So I thought, well, I found my people.
Yes.
And so, for the longest time, I just sat and listened and, just kind of took it all in. And Shannon will tell you, it was a long time before I actually stepped out on the range. But now, through, the one-on-one training and the holster classes and then getting out on the range and drawing from my holster and drawing from my purse, from a concealed carry, I just feel, more confident about it all. Am I the best? No. Do I still do things wrong? Yes. But I feel like I've learned so much, and, I'm a salesman. And as I said, home alone. I'm home alone tonight. My husband's in Cincinnati. So, I do carry, I would say probably 75% of the time, because I find myself on job sites, construction sites, on my job. And I don't know these men that are on this site. I'm often in an empty building with them. And, so I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to protect myself.
That's right.
So that's what brought me here.
I love it. Before we get into the nitty gritty of the classes, I would like the three of y'all to just spend the next few minutes talking about the AWA, the Armed Women of America, and for our listeners out there, right? If you have a girlfriend or a wife, a daughter, a sister, somebody that you love that's dear to you, a female and that is on the fence about getting into the firearms, or into the world of firearms, what would you ladies say to them, and to their husbands or their brothers or their fathers? What can we do to involve more women in the industry and in firearms ownership?
I would say, well, first off, don't go out and buy your wife a gun.
Please don't.
No,
Please
she'll
don't.
hate it.
Please don't.
Maybe make a date out of it. Go to the range. A lot of ranges have special nights, couples nights, and bring her up to the counter where a lot of times they will have guns to rent.
Mm-hmm.
Have her try shooting some various guns. But even before that, if she could get some instruction so that she knows how to properly grip the gun, knows how to line up the sights, and obviously knows the basic safety rules. So there's a lot of classes out there. Some women would prefer to go to an all women's class. Some are open to, a co-ed class. The biggest thing is you don't want her to feel like you're pushing her. Mm-hmm. I've ran into that before where, I've been trying to get my wife to do this, that, or the other thing. And it's, you have to let her make that decision, I think, on her own. For some, it's going to be easier. Some, it will be a little more difficult. But if you start showing her, things like the organizations that we have, Armed Women of America, A Girl and a Gun, great organizations where it's a lot of women. A lot of them have never shot before. They're brand new to shooting. Some are more experienced. We all share knowledge, but maybe introduce her to a group like that as well. A lot of the ranges have groups like that meet there.
And fellas, if she's going to take a class, stay home or stay on the other side of the range.
Yes, please.
Right.
Yes.
And I promise you, she'll shoot twice as she will outshoot you if you just stop yapping in her ear and let the instructor do what you paid them to do. So stay home or on the other side of the range. That's Michelle and Teresa. What about y'all? What advice do you have for us?
I think Shannon really nailed it. Listen to her, let her be her choice. Let her go out there with her girlfriends, have a girls' day to the range. When they have ladies' day, have her say, hey, honey, why don't you invite your sister-in-law? And why don't you guys go check out what they have at ladies' day? Let them try before they buy. Shannon said, just because it's pink, just because it's small does not mean it's going to fit her. Let her be the one to make that decision. And talk to her about her mindset too. I know when I first started, I had a lot of, I can't, I can't rack. It's too hard. And once my mindset changed, those things became easier. So it's no, honey, you can. It's going to take some time, but you can.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, that sometimes we do think it's too hard, but sometimes it's that we just don't have the right gun for ourselves. There are smaller guns, that you can rack differently. And I had definitely technique and, just learning some different tricks to how to do it. And I think that's important to, connect in with a trainer, a group of women who, show you how they overcome that. And I definitely agree about your husband not picking out your gun. I had a gun I carried for about 3 years. And Shannon will tell you, I did everything I could to shoot with this gun. And then I put it to the side and started trying some rental guns. And I realized it was not me. It was the gun the whole time. So, but it was a learning curve, right. And I wanted to give it the best shot I could before I, found what was right for me.
All right. I love it. And then, so Shannon, let's say we have a woman who just went out and she's thinking about purchasing a handgun. Maybe she listened to this podcast, and now she signed up for your Women's Intro to Firearms course. What is the student going to need to bring with them to that class? And what are some of the expectations that they should have coming into it?
First off, I usually tell them, don't rush out to buy a gun for the class. I have plenty of pistols you can borrow. I'd rather you learn the proper technique, the proper skills, the 4 major safety rules before you actually go out and start trying to find a gun. Because in the class, we're going to go over a lot of this on what to look for in buying a gun. What sort of grip should we be looking at? Can your finger properly reach the trigger? Can you reach the magazine release? How is it racking it? Shooting it? Is it a little itty bitty gun that's going to have a lot of recoil to it? So there's just a lot of things to look at that we'll go through, and you can make notes so that when you do go to the range to rent several different firearms, you'll be comparing with the proper grip on each gun. So you can actually compare it properly. You'll know how to shoot it, how to aim it, how to line up your sights. So you'll know what to look for rather than trying to run out, race and buy a gun so you can bring it to the class. So, if you have a pistol you want to bring to the class, great. You can try it out, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, then, we'll have, something for you to borrow. You'll need eye and ear protection. However, I always bring extras. A ball cap with a brim, because there's this funny little thing that gets ejected out of the gun that's hot brass that goes flying through the air, and the brim on your hat will keep that from going in your face, down your shirt. Don't want you doing the hot brass dance. Comfortable shoes, closed-toe shoes. I usually like to see people wearing long pants, again, because of hot brass, long sleeve shirts, high neckline. Obviously, if it's in the middle of summer, you might be wearing some short sleeves. You might even be wearing shorts. But I just prefer to have, most of your skin covered, just so there aren't any issues with the brass. The other things to bring, bring water, bring a snack, bring what makes you feel comfortable, a notebook, a pen, take plenty of pictures. So yeah, I send out a very thorough list on what to bring to class and what to expect.
Nice. Michelle and Teresa, I want to talk a little bit about something that Shannon mentioned, and that's, hey, don't necessarily go out and buy a handgun for this class. Did either of you purchase a handgun or come to the class with a firearm, or is that something that you made a decision on after attending the class?
Go ahead, Michelle.
I had a handgun, but I didn't bring it to class. I wasn't in any way ready to bring it to class, to step out there and shoot it myself. I wasn't ready.
Yeah, I had a handgun our first class, and we realized it really wasn't the right fit. So luckily I had another one and that we're working with now, and it is. But yeah.
What are some of the differences between that first one and as far as like the buying experience goes?
Well, it was really the difference was the grip, was the size. The first one was much smaller. I did not get a solid grip around it. The second one, it's got a wider grip. I'm able to connect nice, solid connection to hands, manage recoil better. My draw is better and faster on it, a lot more secure. But the buying experience between the first and second, I was more confident the second time. The first time I walked in and got talked into things. Now when I go in, I know what I'm talking about. And after I say a few words, they kind of say, oh, okay. And, they'll step away and let me do my thing. Yeah.
My first one, as I said, it was a gun that we had that had been designated as my gun for all the years we'd had it. I had never used it, had never shot it. And so then when I did start shooting it, decided after trying to master it for a few years, it just was not for me. So at that point, without my husband, I went to some different ranges on my own and said, I want to try that gun, from, what I had learned from, some of my friends, that which ones I wanted to try. And then I went to the next range and I picked out a different one. And, so I just kept trying them until finally I had been so many times. My husband's like, you've got to make a decision. You like all these guns, you have to pick one. So we went to one of the local gun shows, and, he's like, just, make a decision. And so I did. And I think I made the right decision for myself for where I am right now. And I'm pretty happy with it. But nobody made any pressure. I totally did it on my own, except for him making me finally make a decision.
You're shooting the P365, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you, Teresa? What are you shooting?
Walther PDPF.
Nice. Good deal. Both good guns. I'm glad it wasn't a micro Kemper.
Oh, no, I had a client who had one of those, and after I worked with her, she sold it.
Guys love buying that handgun for the women. And it's like, all right, cool. This is going to be interesting.
Smaller guns are harder to grip and they're a lot more snappy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're not doing your wife a favor.
Yeah. And I think I'm hopeful that we're finally starting to grasp that idea. Is like, hey, let each person, not just women,
Yeah.
but let each person figure out the gun that works for them. But something that is still there are a ton of options out there, some great options and some terrible options, and with regards to holsters, and specifically holsters for women. So Shannon, talk to us a little bit about your holster class, and then I want to kick it over to the students and really dive into that from their perspective. But what is your main goal with that holster course?
The main thing is, well, we all have a bucket of holsters or boxes of holsters, because we went to the store. We thought this was going to work. It didn't work out the way we thought it was going to. So with the holster class, it gives the women an opportunity to actually try on holsters. And it's not just, holsters with a belt. I mean, we also, we have the Bakandi leggings that have the belt loops in them, where you can actually wear a belt and then put a holster on. We talk about off-body carry, with a purse with an actual Kydex holster inserted into the purse. We have the Enigma. We also carry, we'll have what's bad. So you can actually see the difference between, okay, this is an unsafe holster, or this just is not realistic, versus this would be the better option, the safer option. Another big hit was the flashbang bra holster, which I know Michelle, that really worked well for her. And I have to say, over the years, I originally, was skeptical about the flashbang holster. And then when I figured out how to use it, practiced with it, I thought, okay, this is actually pretty legit. And then I saw a YouTube demo Annette Evans had done, and it changed my mind. I thought, wow, this is a pretty cool concept, and it is a safe holster. It might take a little more practice, but just about any type of holster, you're going to have to practice with it. But anyway, it's to give the ladies an opportunity to actually try on something. And after we do some dry firing with it, with blue guns and practice, we go out onto the range and we'll do live fire from it if the ladies want to. They don't have to, but they have the opportunity to actually shoot from the holster to see what it feels like. How complicated is it? Is it something they want to deal with or not? And so I think overall they feel a lot more comfortable with their selection, because at first, when you're new to carrying, the thought of getting a holster is overwhelming. When I was working at a retail gun store, and I was teaching women's classes, and some of the ladies were amazing shooters, and I would see them come back into the range, and I'd ask them, "Are you carrying now?" "No." "Well, why aren't you carrying?" "I just don't know what to get for a holster. I'm overwhelmed. I see this, I see that, I see bad things about this or good things about it. It's just so confusing." So that's when I thought, okay, I need to do a holster class to get the women introduced to all the different options, because we need options, because we have so many different types of clothing that we wear. We don't wear the standard polo shirt and blue jeans with a belt. We wear a lot of different types of clothing: skirts, dresses, leggings.
Yes.
So we need options.
Michelle, as a student in that class, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, my biggest takeaway was, I have a couple. I would say that the biggest takeaway was that out on the range, well, so many women carry in their purse, but they don't know how to draw from their purse. I mean, what's the reality of that? And so at that class, that was one of the things that we did. And so that's kind of an eye opener. How do you get it out of your purse and protect yourself? So that was a really big thing that I enjoyed about the class. And we did look at some different purses and concealed carry, and we talked about the safety features that were important for for carrying in your purse. And then trying the Enigma and actually putting it on under your clothes, seeing how it felt. It was funny because some of the other instructors were like, you can't, women are so self-conscious of what we're wearing. You always think it shows, but it doesn't. Nobody looks at me and says, oh, she's carrying. I can see that, bulge there. And that's what that is. That's not the reality of what, people see when they look at me. And using the different holsters. I'm not a belt wearer, so the regular Kydex holster is not for me. Trying a thigh holster and the flashbang, were really, great experiences for me and really kind of changed the way that I do carry. So I went from the purse carry to on body carry, like I said, about 75% of the time. So, I mean, but being able to have those right there. I don't own a bucket of holsters. I have 3 that I use, and it's because of, being exposed to all those and having them there to try out.
Yeah, I imagine if you take a solid class on how to choose a holster and you get to try them out, you would actually save more money.
Absolutely.
Because you're not buying 4 or 5 $70 holsters or $100 holsters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Teresa, do you have a bucket of holsters? And let's talk about.
I have a huge bucket of holsters because, of course, I went through multiple firearms before I found the one that I loved. So I had to get multiple holsters, and you've got outside the waistband, inside the waistband, appendix. I remember getting started. I had no idea what the acronyms meant. I'm like, what does that mean? And then you get them, and I'm like, okay, is it inside the pants, outside the pants? Like, which way is up, which way is down? So, Shannon, I'm glad you have these classes because they're important. Mm-hmm. They're important. And, we're built differently as well. Like, in knowing that it can fit and it can be concealed on us, amongst all of the curves that we have. And there are those sweet spots. Yeah. It's important to work on. And when you get your holster, don't get frustrated. That was my first thing is I got it and it didn't feel right. I sat down, like I had to put in the work to make it right. You've got to make the adjustments needed.
Mm-hmm.
I think guys, I'm pretty sure it's safe to assume that guys have it a lot easier in this aspect, right? I carry appendix AIWB, right? And that works for anything I wear, right? Like anything I wear, if I'm not wearing a belt, I have a setup that I can wear without a belt. The Enigma makes that possible, although I don't have one, right? But I'd imagine it make it more convenient on me. But I typically wear pants or shorts, right? And it's one of those things where I know as a firearms instructor myself, it's something that I overlook. And you were talking about the acronyms, and I'm like, oh man, I need to add a block on the nomenclature in our beginning, right? Because it's more than, oh, this is the grip of the gun, this is the barrel. Mm-hmm. Like that stuff really doesn't matter to a new shooter, right? They don't need to know the back. It's right. Yeah, it's okay to know, but what about when they go to the store and they're looking at a holster and they're like, well, are you going to carry IWB, OWB, AIWB? It's like, that's the stuff that's important. I want to kick it back over to Shannon. What are some of the common changes that you see with regards to what women are carrying and how they're carrying it, maybe before they come into your class or, day one, if you talk about that and get their feedback, and some of the common changes that you see for students after they've taken either of these classes with you?
Number one is, a good belt. I've seen a lot of really bad belts. They're loose, they're flimsy. They go to draw from the holster is moving all over the place, or the holster clip does not grasp around the belt and it comes off. I've seen people do that. They'll draw their gun and the holster is sitting on the end of their gun. So now you have a hammer. Okay. That's one problem I see. The other one is many don't realize that how important it is to have a hard piece of material like Kydex covering the entire trigger, the trigger guard. So I do demonstrate in class with an unloaded pistol. Like, you know, some of the, the fabric type, like undergarments for doing like a thigh carry and a gun in a pocket, and it's just fabric.
Some of those leggings are dangerous.
Yeah. We'll put a gun in there, an unloaded gun, and I'll actually put my finger through the fabric and you can see me pull the trigger and hear it go click. That's when I think the light bulb goes off. Oh, that is not safe. That's correct. That is not safe. The other thing is I hear a lot of women that, oh, well, I purse carry because it's easy. Well, honestly, purse carry is a little more complicated than just an AIWB, an inside the waistband holster. Because with purse carry, you need a good holster inside of your purse. I know a lot of the purses come with these fabric holsters, which is a sturdy fabric, but it's sort of a universal holster that's Velcroed inside a pocket of the purse. Well, I like a holster when I put my gun into it, I can hear that click. So Crossbreed actually makes a custom Kydex holster with Velcro on one side. And I use that from the modular belly band that they sell. And I have stuck that inside of my purse. So I carry a Glock 19 or a P365 or a 365 XL. So I've ordered their custom Kydex with the Velcro on one side to actually fit in the pocket of the purse. So you need the Velcro on it. So when you do draw, your holster stays in the purse. It's sturdy. It covers the trigger guard. But the other complicated thing with the holster is, as Michelle and Teresa were talking about, there's a certain technique to drawing from the holster, from the purse. Vicki Farnham does a wonderful class. I took her, I think it was a 3-day class, instructor class for off-body carry. And we got to test out probably 36 different types of handbags. Wow. And what we needed to do in order to properly draw without muzzling ourselves, muzzling other people in the draw process. The other thing that you have to consider is that purse needs to stay with you at all times. Mm-hmm. You can't leave your purse hanging on the back of your chair. Mm-hmm. If you have children, you really have to be careful. So there is a lot more to it with the purse carry. It's definitely a little more complicated. Did we lose Jeremy?
It looks like it.
We got to go.
Well, Michelle, you're the big picture, so you're the host.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's like Shannon was saying, if you're carrying in your purse, you have to wear your purse a certain way so you could even draw from it. You have to unzip You have to unzip and then pull, draw, so if it's not positioned exactly right, it's no good.
What do we do when we go to the restroom with our purse? First thing we do is put it on the back of the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Someone comes to the back of the door, grabs that purse, and keeps on going. You're literally sitting there with your pants down. Now what?
Yeah. You put it over your leg. That's what.
Right? Exactly.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. Because I do purse carry some of the time when I'm going to and from the gym. And that purse goes in my gym bag. And that gym bag is right there at my side the entire time I'm working out. I don't put it in a locker. It's with me at all times. But so there is definitely a need for me to do the off body. But yeah, there's definitely other cautionary notes that go along with that.
Now, that's what I have a lot of. I probably have 10 purses, and some of them are just worthless. I have one that I truly, if I'm going to carry, that's the purse I carry.
Yeah,
I also have a fanny pack too, the rose fanny pack.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I've stuck the crossbreed Codex modular holster inside of there. I can fit a P365 XL with a 17 round mag in it. And I have room for an extra 17 round mag. And I actually shot a match with it. And I think out of, 25, 30 people, I came in 5th. Using
but
that.
It takes practice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
practice.
Absolutely. Practice what your carry rig is.
And unfortunately, probably 95% of the women who carry in a purse have never drawn from it on a range.
They don't practice. Yeah.
Right.
I'd say 95% of guys that carry a gun on them have never drawn it from their holster, other than when they're taking it off at the end of the night or putting it on, or shooting a qualification for their state concealed carry license.
Mm-hmm.
There was the incident a few years back where a woman at Walmart was purse carrying, and her child reached into her purse and ended up accidentally shooting his mother and killing her. And that's one of the unfortunate things. I don't know if there's enough conversation around purse carry from folks or places that are selling purses for that reason. And I don't know if it was a dedicated purse carry holster or gun purse per se, or if it was just like her everyday purse. But there are a ton of considerations that need to go into it. I was carrying, Andy gave me crap for the longest time because I started running a fanny pack, and I said, no, man, I want to run a fanny pack for 6 months or so. And that way I have a better understanding of the limitations of it, the pros, the cons. The most comfortable way for me to carry that Glock 48 every day. And in my full-time job, I'm around a bunch of people, and they were none the wiser. Probably the only people. Anytime I see a guy wearing a fanny pack, I give him the gun guy nod. I know what you got in there, buddy. But we had a question from a viewer with all the challenges in mind with a purse that is typically what criminals are looking for, right? Like, the snatch and grab on the purse. What are your thoughts and tips on avoiding that?
I wear the strap when I do wear it. I have the strap across my body, so that it can't just fall off my shoulder easily. And the biggest thing is awareness. When I'm getting in and out of my car, I'm looking around. When I'm entering a store or leaving a store, those threshold areas, I'm looking around. But I do always, if I do have my purse, it's across my body. But yeah, I think awareness is definitely number one.
Well, and like you said, across the chest with a good, strong strap, because, if, and being aware every time you get out of the car or you're, headed out the door of the store, you're wearing your purse a certain way so that you know how to draw from it. So, you know, your hands are on it, your hands are on the zipper, and, you know, you're just hyper aware.
You are. Well, you know, I was at Sam's Club over the weekend, and I walked by, and I could not. I just was blown away the number of people that had their purses just unzipped. Just something as simple as zip it up. Zip it up.
They leave it on. They leave it in the buggy.
Yes.
Yeah. They put it in the cart, and it's
next to
and they turn their back,
you know, and they're gone. I'm like, yeah.
That child that just killed his mother, I guarantee her purse was in the buggy with the child.
You know,
wasn't on her body.
Yeah, that's why I like the fanny pack. You know, it's strapped to your waist. Some of them are long enough that if you don't want to wear it on your waist, you can actually strap it across your body if you want. But I think the easiest access is having it strapped on your waist. Definitely is a faster draw.
I want to dive back into the women's intro to firearms course in just a minute. I want to talk about one of the things that I noticed on the range as an instructor is there tends to be a little bit more anxiety with new shooters, right? And this is across the board, not just women, but I experience it with new guy shooters as well. And one of the things that I'll see is like the milk in the grip, their palms become sweaty. And then, so one of the things that I like to do is I pull out the little sample pack. I don't know if you've seen them. They're the little packages of the locked in grip from Brian and Shelly Hill. And I give them, you know, a little dime size squirt of the locked in grip on their palms. I have them rub it in a little bit. And then that is one less thing that they have to worry about. You know, for me as a shooter, I like the locked in grip. Yeah, because I don't think I'm really mentally worrying about it. But if I'm not conscious of it, then it does affect my grip, right? So the locked in grip just kind of alleviates the need for me to think about it altogether. But as an instructor, if I can pull that out, I can dab it on their hands, and that's one less thing that they have to worry about because they're already worrying about their sights and the target and the trigger, right? And am I standing correctly? Is everybody judging me? So our show sponsor Locked In Grip is a great tool that I found not only as a shooter, but it's something easy and simple that I can pull out and just give that student a little bit of reprieve from that unnecessary worry, because shooting is simple. And the minute I can get our students to stop thinking about it and just do the thing, it makes me look like I know what the heck I'm talking about. And I know we've talked about some other challenges that women have, specifically with gear selection and choosing the right gun and the right holster. But Shannon, I want you to kind of dig into some of the challenges that you see students coming in with regards to, you know, the basics of shooting, and how you help them overcome that throughout your class.
Usually it's fear of the gun itself. You know, I've had some women that they came in just shaking. And what I like to do is show them the gun and treat it like it's a tool. So I'll take the gun apart and show them the different parts and pieces and what each little part does. They can touch it, they can hold it, they can look at it, see it, feel it. We talk about ammunition, the same thing. This is how it works. These are what the little parts are called. And so when they understand how it works, they realize, oh, when I hold it, it's just not going to go off by itself. It's not going to explode in my hands. Sadly, there's so much crazy stuff on television. That's just plain wrong. But I think when somebody understands something better, it helps take the fear out of it. And I think that's usually the biggest hurdle that we have.
Michelle, I want you to talk to us a little bit about some of the struggles or some of the obstacles that you had in that first class that you took.
I think that the recoil was what I was afraid of. I knew when I pulled the trigger, it was going to have recoil. And so that was one of the things I had to just pull the trigger enough times to learn what that felt like. And, I shot some 22 pistols, and, to kind of ease myself. After I realized that I was afraid of that, I went back to 22 and shot, a lot of rounds, a lot of practice rounds. Before then, I moved into my new, when I got the P365. It was an easier pull, a little less recoil than what I'd had previously. So it kind of eased me, past that. But it just took enough time on the range, to get past that. So that was one of my biggest fears.
And then Teresa, the same question to you. What were some of the obstacles that you had as a student? And then I also know you're a firearms instructor. So, kind of give us the student's perspective, and then your instructor's eye as well. Yeah.
So still working on, and thankfully with Shannon getting better and better every lesson, anticipating that shot. For some reason, I'm dropping my shots. Like I'm ready. I know the bang is coming. I know the bang is coming. But I want to like throw the lead down the lane instead of let the gun do the work. But I'm working on that. I'm working on getting faster on the target and not over confirming. I want to be dead center every time, instead of just getting being good enough. I want to be just right. So. But working through those steps and getting out of my head, that was the biggest thing, is getting out of my head, being present, being in the now, just focusing on what I'm there for, the mission at hand. And when I do that, when I breathe, when I do all of the steps, it's a beautiful moment. I feel zen. It's a beautiful, beautiful moment. Yeah. I hear Shannon behind me going, that's it.
Yeah, that's the... And I worked it into like after the range safety brief and stuff. And I try to get our students to, because we have them shoot a 5-round group, and I tell them, hey, the goal is the same bullet hole and then the smallest group possible. And I'll ask them, hey, what's of the two, which is more challenging? And they're like, oh, the same bullet hole. And I'm like, all right, well, it's really the same level of difficulty, but where you lose accuracy is you're thinking about it too much. And it really is, as an instructor, once I realized that is such a critical thing to get the student out of their own mind, right? Because once they do that, they prove to themselves, I can do it. And then everything else becomes simple. And then, okay, now we can work on all these other small details. And I recently started, when I'm talking about grip, and if I have a student that's a little bit tense, I'll say, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to just imagine that you're squeezing the necks of your enemy, the neck of your enemies with the meaty part of your palms. That's how I want you to hold on to the gun. They chuckle a little bit, they breathe, and then they say, okay, it's not that serious. And then I'll see Andy working with students. Anytime I have specifically a new female student and they have that anxiety, I say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you down to Andy. He's going to work with you for 10 minutes, and he's going to change your entire world. Yep. And he does in a relatively short period of time. And it's really awesome to see, because I know that is the first step to the empowerment piece of what having a tool, yes, the great equalizer, can do for somebody. And it really, it gets me emotional when I think about it, because it's, we've had students in class where they're like, man, the greatest review I ever got was from a female student who was in a wheelchair. And she left us a review, and she said that she was afraid to leave her apartment. She was afraid to go out in her own apartment complex. But after taking the class and training with us, she felt like she had the tools and the skills to defend herself if she ever needed to. And then, she already had that stuff, right? It's not like a earth-shattering thing, but it's the empowerment piece that really becomes life-changing for people. So Shannon, talk to us a little bit more about some other, and this is just a selfish question here, because, I have a corny little joke that I'll tell. Hey, just pretend you're squeezing the neck of your enemy. But what are some other things that students, new students, females, males, what they can do to kind of get out of their own head, or if one of our listeners is taking a buddy to the range and it's their first time shooting, what is some advice that you have for them that they might be able to do to help their loved one or their friend stop overthinking it and just do the thing?
Well, number one, if you're going to an indoor range, it can be rather loud. And I know for first-time shooters, every time a gun goes off, they're doing one of these. They're jumping. I'm just kind of standing there. I'm so used to it. Maybe that's not a good thing. But make sure they have really good hearing protection. Electronic ears are best because they can actually hear. It amplifies people's voices, but it will muffle the sound of gunfire. But sometimes you need to add in maybe some foamies inside. So the more ear protection you have, I think the more calming it will be. If you can take them to an outdoor range, that's even better. And that's usually where I do a lot of my training, my one-on-one training, is at an outdoor range. It's very quiet, it's peaceful, it's calming. And that's usually what I'll hear, especially from women, that, wow, this is not at all what I envisioned. This is very relaxing. You don't ever want to rush somebody. Make sure they breathe. And that's number one. I'll tell them, I want you to count to 5, inhale, hold it for a few seconds, and a long exhale. Concentrate on your breathing. Think about your breathing the entire time. So if your mind is focused on your breathing, it's not going to be overthinking your finger pulling the trigger. So breathing, good ear protection, take them to an outdoor range where it's a lot more calm. Don't rush, don't yell. And that's where it's really difficult to go with your significant other, because sometimes we tend to be, impatient with our husbands or wives or boyfriends, girlfriends. So sometimes it's best just hire a trainer or have them go out with a friend that's more experienced. I've had a lot of women come to me and tell me that they were at a previous class and the instructor was yelling and cussing and making them rush. And it was too much. It was just too much for the new shooter.
Yeah. And that's, we had it was years ago. We had one of our female instructors. We had a new student that, it was a trigger finger thing with an unloaded and safe handgun. For our basic class, our concealed carry class, we run a cold range. That's, for me, it's kind of an easy way to eliminate some anxiety and make sure that our eyes are where they need to be. And that's on the students that we're working with. So if we're not working with the student, the gun is on the firearms table. And I believe that student did something, picked up the gun and pointed it in an otherwise unsafe direction. And our female instructor kind of got, put on that mama bear voice. And I had to pull her aside. I said, hey, man, it's we have all these things in place so that it is okay. It is not the end of the world if somebody violates the safety rule, right? Because they're unloaded, they're safe, right? Like, we understand that these are new shooters. There's an increased likelihood that thing is going to happen, right? I said, the last thing we want to do is react in such a way that they feel stupid or they feel shamed, and then they just don't ever do this again. They don't want to come back and take another firearms course, or they don't want to go to the range because the first time they did it, they messed up and got yelled at. And as an instructor, that's what I tell all of our folks, right? And Andy knows it better. I'm like, hey, dude, it's part of the deal. We might get buzzled. It's our job, and if we do, it's our fault, right? It's 100% our fault, right? Because whatever happens on the range is the responsibility and it's the fault of the instructor. So we really need to. Now, the second time or the third time that it almost happens, okay, that's when we put on the dad voice and we pull that person aside and we say, hey, here's the deal. you get a blue gun for the rest of this day. And if you prove to me that you can run the blue gun, then we'll talk about reintroducing a live firearm with you tomorrow. And it's such a, we don't know people's trauma. And I don't know what that student is coming here with, or what burden or trauma they're carrying with them. And for a lot of folks, there was something that prompted them to go out and get a firearm, not because they want to, but because they felt they had to. And that oftentimes that comes from a place of trauma. So it's important that we do everything that we can to make this a big welcoming thing, and that we're so glad that you're here. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure this is a great experience for you, that you'll learn a ton of stuff, but it's also fun and enjoyable for you. And I want to kind of use that to segue over into Teresa, and then Michelle. I want you guys to talk a little bit about some of the things, and brag on Shannon, right? Because, right, she's your instructor, but what are some of the things that she did to create this ongoing relationship, right? Not only with her, but with you in firearms, because you could have taken that class and you could have been one and done, and hey, that's cool, not for me. But what did she do to build that relationship with you guys?
For me, it's easy. Shannon sets the example. You know, you go to my Facebook page. There are 3 ladies up there that I consider my mentor and my friends, and Shannon's one of them. You know, she's up there, and she just leads the way. When I look at Shannon, I look at Shelley Hill, I look at Harriet Williams, and like, those are my goals, right? Like #goals. That's what I want to strive to be. And they put in the work. When I show up for my training, Shannon's always there before I am. My whatever I'm working on that day is already set up. You know, it's amazing. She's always on point. She's sharp, you know, and you can see her if you ever have the opportunity to do a training with her. Shannon does not mess around. She comes out there, she's serious, and you know, she really does set an example, not just for women, but for men as well.
Thank you.
I love it. All right, Michelle, you're up.
Well, she's incredibly patient. I can't tell you how many times I've muzzled my foot, you know, and every time. So, you know, she's just incredibly patient with me, with, you know, everyone I've ever seen her on the range with. And like Teresa said, everything is always, you know, set up and ready to go. There's never a hint of, you know, hurry up and let's get this done. You know, she's always just there and ready, and has the best advice for whatever the problem is. You know, and if she doesn't, she, you know, turns around to, you know, one of the other leaders, and she'll be like, what do you, you know, what can we do here? You know, maybe she doesn't have the exact right solution for me, but you know, she's willing to work with me or work with anyone and help them, you know, work through whatever the problem is.
Thank you.
Man, patience and putting the work in. And admittedly, there are days, and I'm sure there are times on the range where Andy's sitting over there and he's like, "Oh, Jeremy better check his stuff, right?" Because if he doesn't have a little bit of an attitude shift in the next couple minutes, right, he's going to sidebar me. And I found myself, and it's something that I deliberately, that I have to become more intentional about. And that's the patience piece, right? Because it's just one of those things where I think I forget that just because it's something that I have seen hundreds of times now, it's the first time for that student. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, I am not as patient, and I'm not a doctor. I don't have patience. Right. And that's a crappy attitude that I have, but that's why I surround myself with great people, like Andy and Scott, that when I feel that coming up, I kind of kick it over to them, and then, you know, I kind of reevaluate and readjust myself. But Shannon, you mentioned that you do a lot of private and one-on-one instruction. And as a student, I mentioned as a student, that's my favorite type of training to receive. Mm-hmm. Admittedly, as an instructor, I don't feel like I'm great at the one-on-one instruction. And, you know, so I hand it over to my crutch, Andy, and I let him do all of the one-on-one instruction stuff. But why do you enjoy doing one-on-one instruction, and how do you keep the patience?
For me, it's a challenge, and you sort of have to be a detective and figure out what your student is doing. I take a lot of videos, a lot of photos, because obviously you can't catch everything while the gun is recoiling, what their hands are doing. So I can capture a lot in a video and go through it frame by frame by frame and see, oh, okay, right here, your hand is separating, you know. But it's definitely, it's a challenge, and I can see that individual grow. Whereas if it's just a class with a line of students, you can't give them that attention that some of them need to really get better as a shooter. You can tell them to do this and do that, but they might still be having that same issue that you really can't correct or attend to when you have a class full of multiple students. So I really enjoy it. And I guess I'm patient because I really want to see them improve. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get them, you know, over that wall of whatever that they're having an issue with.
I love it. I love it. And it sounds like that's where it starts, right? There's a love that you have for your students. And it's really, and it sounds like that's, you pour yourself and your instruction into making them better, which is awesome. And then I'm over here like, well, man, I'm a piece of crap. Why the heck? You know, because I love seeing it. I love seeing it on the students, and I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or what. I'm gonna drag Andy out to Tim's place. We got Tim Heron that lives about an hour from us. I was thinking about that today. I was like, man, it'd be cool if Andy and I and a couple of the other guys signed up for a few hours of one-on-one instruction with them out there, because I have seen the most growth for me as far as my shooting skill goes has been through one-on-one instruction. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where I recommend. I was telling a guy the other day, I was like, hey dude, go get 2 hours of one-on-one instruction with this guy, because you will get as much benefit out of 2 hours of one-on-one instruction as you would out of a 2-day class or a 1-day class with somebody else. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And it's, you know, so I think for me as an instructor, there's the fear of, well, what if they don't get better? Right. Because I've ragged on other instructors, and I talk about, you know, there are instructors that don't have shooting standards because they're afraid. And it's kind of ragging on myself, because it's like, well, there is no, it's it. Either they get better because you're a good instructor, or they don't because you're missing it. So I think one-on-one instruction is the challenge of it. When you said that challenge, I'm like, oh, that is. So I got to figure out how to embrace the challenge. I also reached out to Andy. I said, hey, dude, we got to do an intro to women's seminar, not a class, just a session, right? A 2 or 3 hour deal where we can just try to introduce more. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but I feel like the biggest obstacle is that unknown piece that kind of creates fear, right? And it's the fear of the recoil. It's the fear of the gun. And maybe they went out, and I've talked to people, and we have students in class, and you know, they're like, oh, I went shooting with my uncle, or I went shooting with my husband or my boyfriend. And I was like, oh, what'd you shoot? And they were like, oh, I shot this not a deagle. I don't think anybody, Desert Eagle, but I shot a micro compact 1911 or something. And it's like, well, no wonder you didn't have fun. No wonder you don't like it. Like,
I have a story.
Like, no wonder. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, well, of course you would hate that.
One of my first times shooting, I went to a range, and you know what they gave me to shoot?
What?
A judge.
No.
I was with 2 other women. They wouldn't shoot it. I was the only one shooting. I was like, dang.
I've had guys show up with big old meaty hands that can't shoot that freaking gun.
You know they were standing back there watching on the cameras. You
Yeah.
know they were. Like,
Put it on Facebook.
That.
Oh my gosh, that's silly. And it's one of those things where, Teresa kind of started the episode out and when you mentioned that you wanted me to be the minority in this thing. And I think that's a great goal to have, because for far too long, our industry has thrown colors and lace at this thing. And I don't think there's a single woman who is legitimately interested in firearms that gives a damn.
not even a little.
Yeah, like they want to sell guns, so they paint it pink. I was like, well, why don't we? And we've seen it in the last few years, right? The M&P Easy is a great freaking tool. It's a great gun, right? Like it's where they're really just solving these problems, and if you can't run a slide on a semi-automatic handgun, well, Smith & Wesson has a solution for that. SIG with the 365, Walther with the, you know what I mean? Like Glock with the 48 and the 43X. Yes. It's like finally the engineering department stopped listening to the marketing department, and they started really looking at the people that should be buying firearms that haven't been, and say, well, maybe we make a product that works for them. And the cool thing is it works for I carry a Glock 48, a Glock 43X. That is a great gun for a guy. It's a great gun for a woman. The SIG 365 XL. And it's about stinking time that we're starting to figure this out. And I think the next big piece is the training side of it. So it's awesome to hear about Armed Women of America and A Girl and a Gun, and how these organizations are really embracing that call to bring more people into this, not from hey, how do we generate dollars for the NRA, or how do we generate dollars for the gun industry, but how do we make people safer? And how do we make women safer, and introduce them to everything that the firearms industry is, right? Because if we can get somebody into the gun industry that feels like they need a gun to be able to protect themselves, and then they start enjoying shooting, and then maybe they go out and they shoot a match, or they go out and they attend an AWA conference or an AWA meeting, and now once a month they're meeting up with another group of like-minded individuals.
Yes.
And just really bringing in new people, so that it doesn't look like what my grandpa looks like, right? Like it's
we don't want it to get stale, right? I'm pushing 50. Like, I don't have much longer that I'm going to be doing this. I want my 17-year-old niece and, my 3-year-old, when she becomes of age, to start picking up in the industry and start training and doing these things, because number one, there's scholarships out there. I don't know if these children understand that, but school isn't getting any cheaper. There's scholarships out there. There's opportunities. There are other things that they can do with these firearms. And ladies, it's more than just pistols. There's rifles out there. There's shotguns. There's clays. There's a discipline and a field out there for all of us. Whatever you're interested in, it's out there. It's out there. You just have to take that first step.
Absolutely. Is there so we're talking about, you mentioned your niece, and I have a 10-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, and a 1-year-old daughter. And a question that I get asked most often is when are you gonna take them shooting? And I'm like, hey, and they expect me to say, 5. And I'm like, no, it's when my kids show interest in it, that's when I will introduce them to it. And they're like, well, what if they're not? And I was like, I want my kids to grow up healthy and happy. And if that includes firearms, that's great, right?
That's right. Like,
I want their eyes, I'm going to open their eyes to the possibilities and what's available out there to them. But it's going to be kind of on their own, right? And then once they get to an age where they can responsibly and competently use a handgun and, maybe purchase a handgun, that's when we'll have the deeper conversations on how to use it effectively, outside of the home safety stuff. But if my son doesn't want to be a competitive shooter, my daughter doesn't want to be a competitive shooter, that's fine. But there's something out there that is starting to take over the gun training stuff, and it's that ACE virtual, or that ACE XR. Have you guys seen that? with
Yeah,
the Oculus
I'm
headset.
doing it. Yeah.
Oh,
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. It's getting people motivated to get to the range. You know, I think when there's a competition, it starts getting people, you know, out of their armchair and, oh, okay, you know what? So and so is doing that, and I'm going to go try that. Or they're doing that. I know I can do better. You know? Or let's see if I can. But yeah, it's fun. You're working on speed and you're working on accuracy both at the same time. So it's definitely a challenge. You have to do it from your holster, from concealment. You're supposed to be cold, though I will say, I'll admit there's a couple of them I didn't do. I wasn't cold. But the ones I was cold on, I passed. So it gets you working from your holster, working from concealment, working with speed, working with accuracy, and it's fun. So
Yep. That's the 52-week playing card challenge. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's going around the gun groups right now. The Range Buddy app, we're doing for another week or two about Valentine's Day. We're going to do a drawing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a random user from the leaderboard from that 52-week challenge, and they're going to win 500 rounds of 9mm ammo from First Round Ammunition. That's provided by Nick Newberry of First Round Ammunition.
Awesome.
He reached out to me.
very cool.
And he's like, "Hey man, I got 500 rounds of ammo for you." And I said, "Well, let's do a giveaway for Range Buddy." To enter, all you have to do is you have to shoot the drill. You have to, and then log your training session within the Range Buddy app.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can download the app for free. You can use it'll get you the first 3 drills in each one of those categories. So the 52-week challenge is available in that, so you can sign up and won't cost you anything to enter that. Otherwise, the app is $2.99 a month or $14.99 a year. At this time, we're working on a pretty cool update that should be rolling out here in the next month or so.
I have the app.
That's awesome. I really do appreciate that. It's one of these days it'll start making money. But we are working on a pretty cool thing. I'll give you some more details off air. Trying to be a little bit tight-lipped and hush-hush about what the next big update's going to be. And then the other cool thing that I saw that kind of helped bring people into the gun stuff that I think I might get for myself, but also for my son who likes playing on our Oculus Quest, is the Ace XR handset. It's a like a virtual reality deal.
Yeah, Tim Herron's been demoing it.
Yeah, he's probably at like 100,000 rounds.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Yeah, so we're going to try to get line Noah up for an episode on here with us. But I think I'm going to get that for my son because that's I mean, there's no recoil and it's a pretty easy way to introduce somebody into that world. But I think we've done enough talking about things other than the classes that we all joined tonight to talk about. And it's the laziest question that I ask. It's probably the laziest question in podcasting. But it's a question that I'd like to ask because I want to make sure we give you and your course the respect that it's due. Is there anything that we should have talked about with regards to the Women's Intro to Firearms course or the Women's Holster course that we didn't touch on?
I think just basically it is open to all levels. We're gonna meet you where you're at. Everybody's going to be at a completely different stage in their life. I will say that there's been a very small percentage of ladies that decided a gun is not for them. And I just want to put that out there because you might show up to a class and realize, you know, this isn't for me. I honestly could not pull the trigger and shoot somebody. That might be, you know, somebody's thought on, you know, if you can't pull the trigger and shoot somebody, or if you're just way too nervous, it's not for everybody. So I always bring extra bottles of Palm OC spray,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I give them that.
Mm-hmm.
So you should always carry that with your gun anyway,
Mhm.
but just wanted to put that out there. So you might show up for a class and realize, you know what,
It's not for
this
you.
isn't for me. It's okay.
That's okay, and that's a great place to figure it out. That's a much better place to figure it out than the minute that you might need a gun. And introducing in the Palm is awesome, and that is something that everybody should carry. For the longest time, I was like, I don't need to carry it. And I might have told the story before, but in my full-time day job, we get homeless people, sometimes aggressive homeless people. We had one guy that was coming in every day for a couple weeks, and finally I told him, I was like, hey dude, I'm gonna pepper spray you. And he turned to me, he said, don't pepper spray me, man. And he hasn't been back since. So I imagine at some point he was pepper sprayed,
Mm-hmm.
and he realized that there's no easy way to get that off of you. And the police aren't going to be very near and dear to you. You know what I mean? They're not going to be very concerned about you if you're coming in here harassing a bunch of people. So that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Teresa, what about you? Is there anything that we should have talked about that we didn't touch on?
We talked about getting over that first, that hump, that fear. If you're thinking about taking a class, do it, get over it, get it out of your mind. Just look up Shannon, look up, A Girl and a Gun, look up Armed Women of America, find a local chapter in your area. There are plenty of instructors out there that want to help you, that want to see you, reach whatever goals you have. But yeah, just do your best to overcome that fear.
Nice. And then Michelle.
Well, I think that, going to the classes, that you just meet other women who have the same interests you do, the same goals, and, gives you a community of like-minded, for you to be at the range with. And so it helps you with, some ongoing practice and training. And so to me, it's been a lot of that, I've met, great people at the different training classes, so I'm kind of, I guess, a social person anyway, and I do like to meet new people. So that'd be one thing I think is a takeaway from any training class you're at, is meeting like-minded people.
Love it. And for the fellows out there listening, share this episode with the women in your life, because it is important. And if you're anything like me, it's hard to, for gun guys, I'm a firearms instructor, so, but when I talk to my wife about, that part of our lives, it comes from a place of bias, right? So and I feel like our loved ones, it's easier for them sometimes to listen to people that aren't us. And maybe that's just me because I'm a knucklehead.
It's not just you.
Okay, good, right? So, and as a recap, you can come as you are to this class. There's not a minimum skill set that you need to have. You don't need to own a firearm, right? If you don't go out and buy a gun for this class. Let Shannon talk to you about what you need to look for. And absolutely don't let your husband or your boyfriend buy a gun for you, because he's going to buy you something that you don't like. And then you're going to have to sell it or not sell it. And then you're, going to have all this weird feelings about, I don't like this gun, but I can't tell him. So and tell him, hey, I'm going to go train with Shannon. She's going to get me hooked up on what kind of gun I need to buy, how to make that decision for myself. And then you can take me to the gun store and you can buy me the gun that I think is right for me.
There we go.
Or you can go buy it yourself.
Yeah, go buy it yourself.
Yeah.
And then tell him to watch himself. So I know you guys are a couple hours ahead of us. I really do appreciate you jumping on and sharing your evening with us, but more importantly, sharing your expertise and the love that you have for your students and for others with us this evening. For more information, check out shannonpable.com. That's am I saying your last name correctly?
You said it right on.
Awesome. When I normally ask in the pre-show, I usually fumble it in the interview. So I'm just like, let me just wing it. That's shannonpable.com. That'll be down in the show notes wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching this. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. We'll see you.